is the key issues for the community going forward, and this is what I would like to focus on. I think we have a great team put together that brings a lot of collective experience to these issues. We have a lot of great ideas for economic growth. We have a lot of great ideas for doing it in a sustainable way. And from my perspective, I'd like to really make sure that we insert public-private partnerships and looking at more innovative way of doing things in the future going forward.
Thank you, Ms. Dettori. Mr. Spring, what do you believe are the most pressing issues facing the town over the next few years, and how would you address them?
Well, there's multiple issues that are facing the town. As my teammates both mentioned, town-wide reassessment is one of them. If you look at what Tyler Technologies said, they said 33% of people are going to see a tax increase. I believe it's unfair to raise the taxes on people, especially people on a fixed income and people who are living paycheck to paycheck. That's just not right. We're here to fight for the taxpayer, not fight to increase their taxes. Another thing we need to push for the future is the use of power by government, not the abuse of power by government. If you look at what they did to the Boat and Canoe Club, that's a shame. They closed it down, they had Con Ed trucks cut the power in order for them to pursue an interest to make that into a private restaurant. We need to preserve the institutions that keep Ossining great, and that's one of them. So I would look to make a more transparent board that is using its power, not abusing its power. Another issue we so desperately seek is the way to stop frivolous spending. If you look at the town police station that Mr. Perillo mentioned before, they built it at $4.5 million, only to sell it for $1.5. $3 million net loss, $3 million losses in taxpayer dollars. Now, the board should take responsibility for that, but more importantly, they have to come up with a way to tell the taxpayers why they sold it at the net loss. We need to look for ways to spend our dollar better and look for ways to save, not ways to spend. Government is made to tax and spend, not spend and tax. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dettori, in terms of the business community, what in your record distinguishes you from your opponents?
My experience, I bring a lot of public and nonprofit and private sector experience. And being able to navigate those worlds and do it successfully has been a proven strength of mine. So I think in terms of the business community, what I really bring forth is the ability to work with businesses and on a shared value platform. So that means not only thinking of what business needs are, but matching those needs to the community needs so that you really create a symbiotic relationship where all needs are met, but you can really create situations where businesses can thrive, you can attract businesses, it benefits the community in so many ways. So it's the ability to match the needs of business and the needs of our community in a way that all boats rise is what I bring to the table and what I've done successfully at the UN, and I believe I can do successfully here in Ossining. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Spring, in terms of the business community, what in your record distinguishes you from your opponents?
Well, multiple things will distinguish me. First off, I see them as my running mates, not my opponents. We're all running for the same thing, Ossining Town Council. So one of the things that I'm looking to do is I'm pursuing a business career. I actually just a couple weeks ago sat down with billionaire Mario Gabelli to discuss business. And the stuff I learn every day in school and the lessons I learn every day in school, I look to implement into the community. For example, I learned the other day about tax incentives, how tax incentives do not attract businesses into a community. Rather, we need consistent low rates for business owners in order to stay in a community and thrive in a community. So I'm going to look to use my degree that I'm earning, as well as my past experience working in both the deli and my current experience working in a local law office to make Ossining a better place for our businesses. If you look at the Village of Briarcliff meeting from about 2 months ago, they asked the town of Ossining to allocate certain funds to fix 2 roads, one going into North State Road and one going to Chappaqua Road, in order to drive business into the area because there's current potholes on those roads. If I'm elected, I would look to give them those funds necessary in order to make the traffic congestion, in order to impede the traffic congestion rather, and make it so that people can get to these businesses on North State Road and spend their money on North State Road. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Feldman, in terms of the business community, what in your record distinguishes you from your opponents?
I think my strength comes from knowing so many people in Ossining. I know so many different types of business owners, and I love people. So from the locksmith to the garage owner to the lawn guy and Bob's Army Navy, I know a lot about these stores, and I'm interested in listening to them and talking to them about what they feel and what they'd like to see in town. I'm also interested in trying to develop with the Chamber of Commerce a way that people can, as I'm going door to door, I'm hearing, well, why don't we have a place where I can buy some clothes? I said, well, I buy them at Bob's, Oh, does he have that? I didn't know. So I'm wondering if we can't get together some sort of a registry or list that people can go and find the type, know what kind of business we have, and look to see what kind of businesses they like, and work together with the Chamber of Commerce in a very collaborative way to enhance the businesses that we have and promote and attract the ones that the community would like.
Thank you, Ms. Feldman. Mr. Milner,
Yes.
what do you believe are the most pressing issues facing Czechta? In terms of the business community, what in your record distinguishes you from your opponents?
Thanks, John. That's a great question. I look back on my career, I would have to say that building partnerships has been one of my key successes. Most of my career, at least the last 15 years in senior executive role, was to bring communities together, to figure out what was needed to get through whatever the issue was. If it was around emergency preparedness, preparing for a pandemic, if it was improving healthcare disparity, elimination in a community, improving women's health issues in a community. Those are things that I focused on, and I brought folks together as a convener, a neutral convener. Who's missing from the table? What are the things that are needed here? What are we going to do to get down the road? If it's 70%, we've moved down the field. No one ever gets 100%. If you get 100%, somebody loses out. My motto and motto has always been cooperate and graduate. So from a business perspective, I'll bring that same perspective to the community. I use all the local businesses, and I hear from businesses how bad the taxes are, how they're impacted by the high rate of property taxes. So I'll make sure those business leaders are at the table, those folks who have mom and pop shops that are trying to make it, provide jobs for our local community. That's what I think I can bring to this ticket. That's what I bring to this debate. And that's what I think I can bring to the community of Briarcliff and Austin and the town outside.
Thank you, Mr. Milner. And Mr. Milner, our next question, you already started some of it with your previous response. But this past year, many homeowners received an extra refund from the state because our local governing bodies and school boards kept within the limitations of Governor Cuomo's 2% tax cap on local governments. Please address this issue and describe your position on the 2% tax cap. How do you believe it's best to balance taxation with services? Please be as specific as you can.
So I appreciate the fact that some people got a rebate. I didn't get a check. I'm not sure who did. I don't know anybody in my family that got a rebate check, but that's a separate issue. I believe that staying within the budget cap is important. I had to manage my funds as a federal leader and stay within my budget. And so that's an extra piece that I'll just made. There's no question that we've got to find better ways to cooperate and partner with the community to be able to share expenses and share the resources. Not every community has to have the same thing, and so I like the idea that we can have interagency, intermutual agreements as a way to hold the spending cap. But I also think that we've got to look outside and get away from a lot of the cronyism that's been going on. When you have someone who's leaving office to be transferred into another town-paid position, such as what's happening with the cemetery management, I think that's wrong. Somebody needs to look at that and make sure that that's A, legal, and B, not being done in a way that is against law or against rule or against, it doesn't smell right to me to have somebody leave an office not being reappointed by their party and then put into another office. So I would work hard to make sure that there's transparency and clarity in all of the processes that go across our government.
Thank you. Ms. Feldman, This past year, many homeowners received an extra refund from the state because our local governing bodies and schools kept within the 2% tax cap presented by Governor Cuomo. How do you, please address this issue and describe your position on the tax cap? How do you believe it best to balance taxation and services?
Okay, well, I was happy to get a check in the mail. I admit that. I think it's really important to try to keep a cap on the taxes. I think one of the things that hurts us the most are the unfunded mandates. So I think continuing to lobby Albany to reevaluate and see how many of the unfunded mandates are absolutely necessary, and if we can't do away with some of them, that would help us stay within our tax cap. I think that we can incorporate more green technologies into our town and our infrastructure, so that maybe we can lower our utility bills and save some money that way, and try to, save the taxpayers some money that way. I look forward to working with Dana and all of her experience with grant writing and finding grants and other funds available from places other than our tax dollars. In these ways, we really hope, and sharing services, of course. In all these different creative ways, I hope to, and as a board, Karen, Dana, and I really hope to work together with the current board and find creative solutions that don't involve raising taxes and staying well within the cap. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Spring, this past year, many homeowners received an extra refund from the state because our local governing bodies and schools kept within the limitations of Governor Cuomo's 2% tax cap. Please address this issue and describe your position on the tax cap and how you best believe it to balance taxation and services.
Okay, so there's multiple ways that we can use the tax cap to balance both taxation and the use of our services. One, as Mr. Perillo mentioned before, was the consolidation. When elected, there should be quarterly meetings between the Village of Briarcliff, the Village of Ossining, Town of Ossining, and the school board to see where they can consolidate, for example, the rock salt and the stones. Another way in which we can look to keep taxes down is if you look at multiple districts in Briarcliff that pay Ossining school tax, they're actually double taxed on the library. They pay both Briarcliff library tax and Ossining library tax. We should so that they only have to pay one and give them, relief on their library tax, if you will, because everybody else only has to pay one. Therefore, these districts should only have to pay one as well. As Ms. Levenberg mentioned before, these grants that exist, they shouldn't be written only if the team gets in. These grants should be looked at regardless. If the state aid exists, if Sandy Galiff and the state aid exists and these resources exist, we should be looking into them now, before the election. They shouldn't just be passed because someone gets elected or doesn't get elected. These need to be, if these are going to help the taxpayer and these are going to help the children in the schools, they need to be looked at now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Spring. Lastly, Ms. Dettori, this past year, many homeowners received an extra refund from the state because our local governing bodies and schools kept within the 2% limitation of Governor Cuomo's tax cap. Please address this issue and describe your position on the tax cap. How do you believe it best to balance taxation with services?
Well, first I'd like to acknowledge my running mate, Dina Levenberg, for playing an instrumental role along with the school board of making sure that we stayed within the tax cap. I think there are many ways that we can look to make our governments more efficient. I think the ideas of consolidation where it works make perfect sense. I think they should be explored more fully. Again, I will bring my experience in partnership, public-private partnerships to this discussion as well. I think that there are untapped opportunities to make things more efficient. We do have an opportunity to expand green technology. We have an opportunity to do many things within our community to make things more efficient, more seamless, and also really look at going forward, how can we best achieve those objectives by looking at something in a different way. So there's so many different opportunities right now, so many organizations that are well positioned to play a role in improving our quality of life, making our lives more efficient, our economy more efficient. So to that end, I think that we've made a good start in this, and I think it's something that we should take forward, and we have a great team here with an experience to do so that's already proven that it can. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Spring, Contentious positions for the town this past year revolved around the Ossining Canoe Club, the reduction of salaries of certain elected officials, Dale Cemetery, or the tax reassessment. Briefly describe your views on one or more of these issues and how you would handle that issue going forward.
Well, first, let's start with the tax reassessment. They started by breaking your Fourth Amendment rights by invading your private property to reassess your taxes. And then, if you look at what they said, 33% of people would see an increase in their taxes. I believe, once again, this is unfair, especially for people on a fixed income, people living paycheck to paycheck. If you look at Tyler Technology, who said this is revenue neutral, not going to be any revenue made off this, I advise you to read the New York Times article about what happened in Scarsdale, where they created $1.2 million of taxable revenue because of the reassessment there. I tell every government official, if you have a room full of garbage, do you raise the ceiling so you can put more garbage in it, or do you start to clean the garbage up? We don't need more revenue. We just need to use our resources in a more, efficient and transparent way. Going back to elected officials. Officials are elected at a certain salary by the taxpayer. It is not up to a town board to play with the salaries of these officials. If the voter has an issue with the salaries made by a certain official, it's the responsibility of the voter and the responsibility of the party, the opposing party, to put up someone else or to put up a proposal to cut these salaries. It's not up to a town board to do this. You cannot cut someone's salary in half. Once again, people living paycheck to paycheck. How do you expect them to pay for their house? How do you expect them to pay their taxes when they now have 50 cents of every dollar they used to make? And going back to the Boat and Canoe Club, use of power, not abuse of power. That's what government is about. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sprint. Ms. Dettori, the contentious positions for the town this past year revolved around the Ossining Canoe Club, the reduction of salaries of certain elected officials, Dale Cemetery, and the tax reassessment. Briefly describe your views on one or more of these issues and how you would handle them.
I think one of the greatest challenges is that while we all agree that we want lower taxes, how we get there is maybe we're not always in full agreement. So in trying to do the right thing, it's important to remember that it's not just doing the right thing, it's how you do the right thing. So it's important in making any decisions that affect taxpayers, that affect people's livelihoods, that affect any number of things that affect us personally, because we all live in a community. We know each other. We see each other all the time. So we have to think about not only what we're doing, but how we're doing it. And that's really an important consideration, because a lot of times we can reach the same conclusion. We can be more efficient, we can be more effective, but we don't necessarily have to alienate people in the process, and we can do so in a way that we can have more dialogue, more discussion, more transparency to make sure that as we're doing things that we believe will ultimately benefit the taxpayers, that we're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dettori. Mr. Milner,
Yes.
contentious positions for the town this past year revolved around the Ossining Canoe Club, the reduction of salaries of certain elected officials, Dale Cemetery, and its tax reassessment. Briefly describe your views on one or more of these issues and how you would handle them going forward.
Thanks, John. Well, I think I mentioned how I feel about the Dale Cemetery. I would call for forensic audit. I would look at this from a legal perspective and make sure that if there was any impropriety, that there would be consequences. And that's how I would stay with that. I'm a fresh set of eyes, and I'll be able to look at these things with a fresh set of eyes and not be bound by any political wranglings, not have any obligations to anybody from a political perspective. I'm a registered independent, and therefore I'm not bound to any of these cronyisms that's been going on for many, many years in this town. I think that what was mentioned about the salary cut, Aaron spoke well to that. I would just reestablish those salaries and make sure that if there is a concern about someone's salary, then as Aaron said, we need to have a party needs to run an opposition, or you need to be a petition to change the salary. So I would restore Michael Connor and Gloria Freed's salary to their elected level that was approved by the the citizens. And then in terms of reassessment, I think I've already spoken about that. I would put a stop to it on day one and would make sure that we don't have unnecessary reassessment. That we're taxing people out of the ability to stay here in Ossining. That doesn't do anything for sustainable, affordable housing. If taxes go up, rents go up, people can't afford to live here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mulder. Ms. Feldman, contentious positions in the town this last year revolved around the Ossining Boat Canoe Club, the reduction of salaries of certain elected officials, Dale Cemetery, and the tax reassessment. Briefly describe your views on one or more of these issues and how you would handle them going forward.
Okay, I know what everybody thinks I'm going to talk about. Anyway, I did just want to say on the idea of reassessment, none of the people running were the ones that made the decision to reassess, but it hasn't been done since the 70s. And while I understand there's going to be a third of the people whose taxes will go up, there's also supposed to be a third that go down. Some of those people could also be on fixed incomes and could really use a little extra money in their pocket for their health care or something else. So I think a fair distribution is warranted. Enough about that. Anyway, Ossining Boat and Canoe Club, dear to my heart. I think it's a unique jewel on the Hudson. I think it speaks to our history, our community efforts, our sense of community, where it's a bunch of people who got together and built a boathouse for affordable access to the Hudson. Back in the 20s, when the people first got weekends, and there was first and Fair Labor Act, when the weekends and the living wage came to be, people found themselves with a disposable income for the first time, and the people that didn't want to have the yachts got together and built a place where they can bring their canoes and their ice boats, and they worked together to build it and maintain it for over 100 years now. And I think it's a wonderful asset for our community, and I think it just speaks to how teamwork and our sense of volunteerism in our community. We have the biggest volunteer fire department, ambulance corps, and the boat club, and it's a place where people learn to work together. I think it's a valuable thing.
Thank you, Ms. Feldman. And our last question. Ms. DeTore, on November 3rd, when we go to the polls, what thoughts will you hope are in the minds of the voters that will differentiate you from your opponents and will persuade the electorate to vote for you?
Thank you, John. On November 3rd, important to remember that date, I hope that when people go to the polls, they think to themselves, who has the experience, who has the commitment, who has the proven skills to successfully take the role of town council person. So I believe that I have demonstrated that I have those skills, I have the commitment, and I have the leadership abilities to bring something to the town that's needed, to bring a different way of thinking. I'm not, this is my first time running. I'm not a previous elected official, so I have a different perspective. I think a perspective that's valuable. And I want to make sure that people understand that what my greatest strength is the ability to bring people together, to engage stakeholders, to be transparent, to work with integrity, and to achieve success. I mean, I have achieved success here in Ossining. I've achieved success in my other roles, and the work I'm doing right now with IFCA is moving forward in a very positive way. So that requires a tremendous amount of leadership ability. I was hired to reposition the agency, and I've done so. We've already leveraged $1.2 million of loan money without increasing our current debt service. That money is being reinvested in the community, into our buildings. We own 13 buildings in Ossining, and it's proven to be an effective way to lower operating costs and achieve greater efficiency. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. DeTore. Ms. Feldman, on November 3rd, when we go to the polls, what thoughts will you hope are in the minds of the voters that will differentiate you from your opponent and will persuade the electorate to vote for you?
I think I bring a different perspective to the board than my other teammates. I think together we work well. I'm a lifelong Ossining resident. I've been active in the community my entire life and volunteering in many different areas. T-Town, Boat Club, Scouts, soccer, you name it. I think that somebody who understands the history and has lived it and has watched the growth of the town and the development over the last not quite 50 years, leaves a different perspective. And I know so many members of the community. I love people. As a dental hygienist, I meet all different kinds of people all the time. And I think just being so interactive and involved in the community, I really bring a strength to the board in that way.
Thank you, Ms. Feldman. And Mr. Milner?
Yeah.
On November 3rd, when we go to the polls, what thoughts will you hold are in the minds of the voters that will differentiate you from your opponent and persuade the electorate to vote for you?
John, thank you for that question, and I also want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to join remotely. As you know, I had this commitment booked approximately a year ago, involved work and some vacation, and I have to thank you and all of you for giving me the chance to come in by Skype. I'm a fresh set of eyes for this community. I have deep roots in this community. I have many, many family members who live here, have lived here for many, many years. Spent 39 years in uniform, defending our country and working in communities to make them better. I'll do the same thing in listening. I'm a connector, I'm a team builder, I'm not somebody who's not transparent. In other words, I'm somebody who's out in front and visible, and I spent a life of service, building integrity in my career, my professional career, as well as my community service career. I live in the village, but I'll represent the town, and I'm business friendly. I support well-planned, thoughtful, well-developed ideas to improve our business community and support all of our residents. I want to see my nieces, nephews, in-laws, and family members have an Ossining that's vibrant, a community that's going to be there for them when they decide to raise a family, and hopefully they'll stay here in Ossining and in our surrounding community. Thank you again for the opportunity to be here. I appreciate everyone's effort to make all of this work. Thank you to the Chamber and your partners for making this happen.
Thank you, Mr. Milner, and thank you to all of our candidates for town council. Oh, I'm sorry.
So what differentiates my team from the other team? This is not an issue of Republican versus Democrat or conservative versus Democrat. This is an election about the issues. Look at townwide reassessment. I urge you to read about Lewisboro and Scarsdale, what happened there. It was not the 33, 33, 33 that they said it was. If you look at Scarsdale alone, more than 50 to 60% of people, between 50 and 60% of people saw a tax increase. This is not revenue neutral. They are going to raise the taxes. The taxpayer loses when reassessment happens. I also believe that the Bow and Canoe Club, very important part, you said the jewel of the Hudson, or the jewel of Ossining. We need to preserve that and we need to respect it. Like I said, government officials need to use their power, not abuse their power, and that involves protecting and respecting the Bow and Canoe Club. When we look at our elected officials, we need to restore those salaries. Those people were elected at those salaries, and they deserve to be paid those salaries. If there's an issue with that, it's up to parties to run a candidate. These issues, like I said, are very important. We've seen one party rule this town for the last 15 years. We need bipartisanship. It's how progress gets done. You need to have two sides seeing the situation. We can't have one person suggesting an idea and four bobbleheads nodding their head every time something is proposed. We need bipartisanship, and my team will offer that. So please come out to vote. That is the most important part, whether you vote for us or not. Come out to vote on November 3rd. That's how democracy works. Thank you, and come out to vote.
Thank you, Mr. Stern, and thank you to all of the candidates who are running for town council. And our last segment will be that for Westchester County legislators. Kate Mamone is running on the Republican and Conservative Party lines, and Catherine Borgia is running on the Democrat and Working Family Party lines. Ms. Mamone, please tell us about yourself. What credentials do you bring to the office that you serve? And please include your education, career achievements, as well as specific skills that will enable you to excel.
Can you hear me okay? Okay, great. Okay, so let's do the question one more time. I've never done this before, so just bear with me.
Please tell us about yourself. What credentials do you bring to the office you seek? And please include your educational and career achievements, as well as specific skills that will enable you to excel in your position.
Okay. My name is Kate. I was born and raised in Croton. My kids are sixth generation Crotonites. My husband's a business owner here in Ossining for over close to 40 years. I'm also a business owner myself. Like I said, I'm a married mom. I also work full-time, and I also have my own business. My education background, I have an associate's degree in hotel restaurant management. I followed that up with a Bachelor of Science degree from Mercy College here when I was a single mom, and I have worked for the county law department for doing juvenile delinquency, paternity and support hearings, as well as working for the state insurance fund for their legal department. And I've also worked for private law firms here. And I've also worked on federal and state cases, and I have had my attorneys win their cases.
Thank you.
Anything else?
That's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Borgia, please tell us about yourself. What credentials do you bring to the office you seek? And please include your education and career achievements, as well as specific skills that will enable you to excel in your position.
Thank you. Thank you very much, John. And thank you to everyone who's hanging out for the last portion of this evening. And thank you to the library for making this available to us and for the chamber. So my name is Catherine Borgia. I am currently serving as the majority leader of the Westchester County Board of Legislators in my second term. Prior to that, I was the town supervisor here in the town of Ossining, also for 2 terms, and prior to that, I served 2 terms on the village board. I came to public service after a fairly extensive career in business, where I worked for Fortune 500 companies, as well as marketing and public relations and fundraising agencies. I also have 2 small businesses, a consulting business where I continue to do marketing and public relations for nonprofits in Westchester and in Manhattan. And I have an MBA from NYU Stern School of Business, and my bachelor's degree is from SUNY Binghamton. I come to public service after a really extensive career in volunteering. I moved to Ossining soon after I was married, raised my family here, and for the past 24 years I've been engaged in service to the public in one form or another. I volunteered for basically every safety net here in the community. I'm currently on the T-Town board. I co-founded the Ossining Microphone with my friend Dana Levenberg. You've heard a little bit about that. Because we saw a need in the community. I've been engaged in the PTA, the Junior League. I sit on the T-Town Advisory Board. I was a religious education teacher at St. Augustine's for 10 years, so I have a very deep and rich experience in the community, and I think that really prepares me to serve this community, to serve all of the communities of the 9th Legislative District in a way that is a very grassroots-oriented way, but still with a very big picture regional planning type of mindset that enables us to work collaboratively in order to create good outcomes for all of the people of this district, of this community, and of Westchester. And in my 2 terms on the county board, I've had a very strong focus on pro-business, especially small local businesses.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Ms. Borgia, what do you believe are the most pressing issues facing the county over the next few years, and how would you address them?
You know, I think that, thank you, John. I think that the issues that face Westchester County are not unique. I think that we know that we have tight economic times right now. We've heard from our county executive as recently as today that he anticipates that the budget that he proposed to us for this current year is going to have a $25 million deficit, operating deficit this current year. And he's projecting that we're going to see a $77 million deficit in the 2016 budget. So we have some real challenges ahead of us. But I think it's very important for everyone in elected office not to only look at the short term. Decisions that we make in public office impact us for the short term, but also impact us for many, many, many years to come. You have to think 20 years, 50 years, 100 years out. I think when you look around at communities like Ossining, we have been on the cusp of something new for a long time. And what the opportunity that we have in this community, in Westchester, is to look at things with a new perspective, with a bigger picture vision, and with the opportunity to do things in a more efficient and effective way. I was able to do that as the town supervisor here in Ossining, where I was able to have 2 consecutive tax cuts after doing a great deal of good government work in Ossining, and where I was able to support local businesses by creating an atmosphere of economic sustainability.
Thank you. Ms. Mamone, what do you believe are the most pressing issues facing the county over the next few years, and how would you address them?
Okay, well, the most important thing here is we have taxes. The taxes in Westchester County are very high. And it's very hard to live here, especially when you're a business owner and you're also working full-time. So I would like my family my kids that are 6th generation Crotonites to be able to live in Westchester and raise their own family here in Westchester. So for me, as a business owner and as a mom, the most important thing is our taxes. We need it here affordable. And second of all, with the HUD zoning for the federal government, we also would need to have more say in our local zoning. And most of all, most importantly, we need to have business owners to be able to live here in Westchester. That's most important. If we don't have businesses here, everyone's going to leave Westchester County. And I would like to bring a new set of ideas, new way of thinking, and fresh blood into the county legislator position, and take it from a perspective as a business owner and somebody that's lived in Westchester County for their whole life.
Thank you. Ms. Mamone, our next question. What is your plan to help the economies of the river towns and to help Ossining?
That's a very good question, and I'm so glad you asked that. As a business owner, my husband and I, we both own our own businesses. I also work full-time. So I'm glad that you asked that, because the best thing that we need here is more businesses, and it'll also bring more income here. And it'll also bring more people, tourism here in Westchester County, which we're trying to promote. And every river town, their Chamber of Commerce is trying to get more people up here. The more people spend, and the more attractive it is for a business owner or even anybody to just live here, is a good, vibrant community. And we want that here in the river towns. So as a business owner, you know, we want it affordable here. So, and you gotta have taxes low enough to have people live here.
Thank you. Ms. Borgia, what is your plan to help the economies of the river towns and to help Ossining?
So, along with some of my colleagues, we've really focused on bringing some resources up into this area of the Rivertown section. There's this tendency in Westchester County, I think, because of where our significant areas of population are, is to look at below 287 as being where Westchester is. But we all know that there's so much to offer here in the North River quadrant of our county. And so I have made sure that we are receiving our fair share of county resources, from a very practical matter of making sure that our infrastructure is equally maintained. Pleasantville Road was brought up in one of the other debates, and that is a road that intersects both the village of Croton, it intersects with North State Road and the town of Ossining, but it is a county-owned road. So one of the things that I insisted on in this level of capital projects was that that road be not only moved up in terms of repairing, but also that we work collaboratively with the affected municipalities to make sure that the work that's done can be most beneficial to the municipalities. I think also we need to, I've hosted several small business forums, and actually I'm planning another one, so if there's any business owners in the audience who would like to participate in that, please do let me know afterwards, where we talk about what are the needs in the life cycle of different businesses. I've had a great opportunity to collaborate with Westchester Community College, their incubator program, to hook up resources for small business owners, particularly women and minority-owned businesses, to access the wonderful services that we have at the Community College for Business Growth. So I think a continued focus on creating the opportunities, creating the atmosphere, and making sure that we in this part of the county receive our fair share of resources is really what's going to grow our economies. My running mates at the local level, I think, have spoken a lot about the thing that businesses need is customers. So we need to make sure that this is a place where people want to live, where people want to spend their money. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Westchester County is the highest taxed county in the nation. Rob Astorino describes 85% of our county taxes as necessary to meet 9 state mandates. So what is your position on this issue, and do you believe that the county tax burden can be lowered? What initiatives would you put in place to reach your objectives?
Sure, thank you, John. So in New York State, counties act as basically a service conduit for programs that are funded by the state and federal government. We do have mandates that are imposed by New York State, which are for services that in our current form of government in New York State are provided by the counties. So that doesn't leave us with a lot of opportunity. In our $1.65 billion budget, it's about $500,000 of discretionary property taxes to fund other sorts of programs and to do the things that improve our quality of life here, like our parks and recreation. Where I see an opportunity, and I bring a unique perspective because I neglected to mention in my introduction that I started my public service career as Assemblywoman Gaylor's Chief of Staff. So I have interesting information from the state level of government, the local level of government, and now at the regional county level. I think that there's a lot of opportunities when you look at people's property taxes. It's a composite of many different types of taxes. We have our local tax. We have, if you live in one of the 2 villages in the town, you have a village tax, a town tax, and a school tax, as well as your county tax. So the opportunities that I see for the county level is to take leadership in creating areas of savings so that the property tax burden is lowered. It's not so much which piece of the pie, you don't really care which piece of the pie gets reduced, really just care that your entire property tax burden is reduced. So we have a really excellent leadership opportunity that I took as the chief elected in the town of Ossining, and that I would like to see us, especially as we're facing such extreme budget deficits, like to see us take a leadership role in Westchester County to help collaborate with all of the other pieces that comprise the property tax bill.
Thank you, Ms. Borgia. Ms. Mamone? Westchester County is the highest taxed county in the nation. Rob Astorino has stated that 85% of the taxes collected in the county are used to satisfy 9 state mandates. Do you believe the county tax burden can be lowered, and what initiatives would you put in place to reach your objectives?
Okay, so yes, I agree that we have the highest amount of taxes here in the county, I mean the country, and it's very difficult to live here. And Mr. Astorino has done an excellent job of not raising taxes here over 5 years in a row, and I'd like to keep it that way. However, you know, as a business owner, I feel like the more people we can get into Westchester County will help spread everything out. So that means that as a business owner, if we have sustainable, like he's created over 30,000 jobs here. So if you can create more business opportunities for business owners here, it will bring more people in, and that more people will help spread, be able to contribute to our tax base.
Thank you. And our last question. On November 3rd, when we go to the polls, what thoughts will you hope are in the minds of voters that will differentiate you from your opponent and will persuade the electorate to vote for you, Ms. Malone?
So, be my first opportunity to serve the people of our district, District 9, Croton, Ossining, Peekskill, and a bit of Briarcliff. So, I believe that I would bring a bipartisan approach to the county government. I would also bring a fresh perspective for running the county at from the eyes of a business owner, as well as married to a business owner. And I believe that I could do an excellent job, and that I will give the constituents here a fresh perspective and a good outview, and I would want to run this part of the county in a sensible, business-like approach.
Thank you very much. Ms. Borgia, on November 3rd, when we go to the polls, what thoughts will you over in the minds of the voters that will differentiate you from your opponent and will persuade the electorate to vote for you?
Thank you. First of all, let me say thank you for the support that I have received from the voters of this district for the various roles that I have sat in. When I started working for Assemblywoman Galiff, I was coming from a fairly extensive business background, and during my first week on the job, I was able to help a woman receive about $70,000 in unclaimed funds, which allowed her to stay in her home. I was able to help a woman with an insurance claim for her daughter's dental work. I grew addicted, basically, to helping people in the role as a public servant. It's been such an honor and a privilege to do that. I hope when people go to the polls on November 3rd, they think about not only what's in front of us right now, the immediate concerns, but they think about the opportunities we have. Westchester is such a wonderful place. We're so resource rich. It's a beautiful community. We have a tremendous amount of assets here, our people being the biggest of them. And I think that it's time for us to start thinking bigger, to reestablish Westchester County as a thought leader in the nation. I was privileged to be chosen as the New York State representative to an organization, the National Association of Counties training program for leaders. And I heard there that Westchester, people used to look to Westchester County to see how things should be done. And over the past 5 years, although we've certainly seen some opportunities happen, working together in a bipartisan way, I think we've really lost that leadership opportunity. And I would like to go back to Westchester County in order to reclaim our opportunities to really be the place where we create a place for all residents to live and thrive, and to really make Westchester a successful, diverse community that we are, and really increase the opportunities. So I think looking to the future is what I want people to be thinking about on November 3rd.
Thank you very much, Ms. Borgia, and thank you very much to our candidates for county legislature. That concludes our program for this evening. We would like everyone to go out to, be sure to get out and vote on November 3rd, not the 4th. And we thank you for coming and joining us at the candidates forum. Have a great evening.
Come on, Jerry. Get out of the picture.